This movie cost over $150 million and still became one of the biggest flops of 2004. And yeah, people love to say Alexander was ahead of its time. But let's be honest, that's mostly sarcasm. Back then, audiences and critics didn't really do the whole ignore the bad parts, praise one bold scene thing. So stuff like Jared Leto running around naked, that didn't make the movie brave. It just made people laugh, and not in a good way. But here's the crazy part. Oliver Stone didn't just wake up one day and make this movie. He spent over 10 years trying to get it made. Studio after studio read the script, saw a few interesting ideas, and passed, fast, every time. Until finally, in 2004, everything somehow lined up, and Stone got the money to make his dream project. The result? One of the most expensive misfires of the year. Stone first tried to make Alexander right after The Doors in 1991. That movie starred Val Kilmer, who at the time was on the rise. Now, Kilmer had a reputation for being, let's say, difficult. But with Stone, he actually worked well. So well, in fact, that Stone originally wanted him to play Alexander. The problem? No studio wanted to touch the project. Back then, Hollywood was terrified of big historical epics. They were expensive, risky, and didn't always pay off. And Stone's script had one more detail that made things even worse for nervous producers. So the project went nowhere. Stone tried again in the mid-90s after Nixon. Around the same time, Mel Gibson was out there yelling "Freedom" in Braveheart. The movie won Oscars, sure, but financially, it wasn't exactly a goldmine. And if that kind of film struggled, studios definitely weren't rushing to fund another giant, ancient epic. So Stone got rejected again. Eventually, he moved on and made U-Turn, a much smaller film that, ended up getting a Razzie nomination. Not exactly the comeback he was hoping for. Then came 2000, and everything changed. Ridley Scott drops Gladiator, and suddenly Hollywood is obsessed with swords, sand, and ancient history again. Huge hit. Massive success. Everyone wants their own version. And Stone? He sees his chance. He goes back to Alexander, and this time he actually gets the money. Around $140 million. But of course, it wasn't that simple. Studios were interested, but they had notes. Big ones. Basically, we like the story, but maybe tone down certain parts. Especially anything related to Alexander's bisexuality. Stone's response? Not happening. He doesn't really do compromise. So instead, he starts pulling money from everywhere. Europe, independent funds, whoever's willing to invest. Warner Brothers steps in for about 35%, mostly to handle US distribution. And just like that, the movie is finally happening. Except now comes the casting nightmare. Stone wanted someone like Kilmer, but younger, fresher. So he goes after Heath Ledger. Ledger is interested. They meet, it looks promising. And then he walks away. No deal. Stone pivots, tries Tom Cruise. At this point, you can feel the desperation creeping in. Cruise reads the script and says no. So now what? Eventually, the role lands with Colin Farrell, who was rising fast at the time. And people? Yeah, they were not happy about that casting, especially the accent. Stone's solution? Cast more Irish actors? Seriously, his logic was basically if everyone sounds Irish, then no one stands out. And to be fair, he actually tried to make that happen. For the role of Philip, Stone wanted Liam Neeson. But Neeson got sick, so the role went back to Val Kilmer. Then there's Ptolemy. Stone reaches out to Sean Connery. Connery hears the offer and decides to retire instead. That's not even a joke, that's what happened. Some of the cast later admitted they were literally trying to copy Farrell's accent, just to fit in. Which is kind of wild when you think about it. Then there's Hephaestion. Stone wanted Brad Pitt and was even ready to expand the role for him. Pitt still said no. Officially, he just wasn't interested. Unofficially, probably the same controversial elements in the script. But Jared Leto? He read it and said yes immediately, no hesitation. And just when things seemed locked in, another problem shows up. The role of Olympias. Monica Bellucci was originally cast. She agreed. Everything looked good. Then she met Farrell and backed out. According to her, they just didn't click. No chemistry. So Stone scrambles again. Next option, Catherine Zeta-Jones. She's interested, but she's booked. The Terminal, Ocean's 12. No time. And here's where it gets interesting. Zeta-Jones is actually the one who suggests Angelina Jolie. Jolie says yes. Stone signs her immediately, no second thoughts. He didn't really have the luxury to think twice. And that's how you end up with a very unusual situation where Alexander's mother is played by an actress who's actually younger than him. And then the real chaos started: production. This shoot was rough, really rough. Stone had to scrap multiple locations, which instantly added another $15 million to the budget. The original plan was to film in India, especially for the big elephant battle. Sounds epic, right? Yeah, not so much in reality. The elephants were almost impossible to control. What was supposed to be a battle scene was dangerously close to becoming an actual disaster. So the crew packed up and moved everything to Thailand, where elephant training was way more advanced. And here's the ironic part. Stone later said the elephants were actually easier to work with than the horses. The horses were the real problem. Way harder to control, way more dangerous. But even after all that, things still didn't go smoothly. Heavy rains ended up damaging part of the footage from the elephant battle. That's why in the theatrical version, the scene feels messy, cut up, and full of filters trying to hide the damage. Later cuts fixed some of it, but the original release definitely suffered. And just when things couldn't get worse, they did. Colin Farrell breaks his leg. Not during some intense battle scene, not on a stunt. Just walking down the stairs. That's it. Production almost falls apart. Stone has to rewrite scenes on the fly, which is why Alexander suddenly spends a lot more time sitting than you'd expect from one of history's greatest conquerors. Not exactly the most heroic look. Then come the test screenings, and yeah, they did not go well at all. Normally, this is where a studio steps in, cuts the runtime, reshapes the movie, and tries to fix things. But here's the twist. Most of the money came from independent investors, so no one could really force Stone to change anything. The movie lasts almost 3 hours, and a lot of people later pointed to that as one of the reasons it failed, and then it hits theaters. $155 million budget, $34 million in the US. That's not a bad opening, that's a disaster. Worldwide, it makes another $133 million. Still not enough, not even close. Losses were huge. And yeah, Warner Brothers took a lot of the blame. After those bad test screenings, they basically gave up on the movie and slashed the marketing budget. So you end up with a $150 million epic marketed like a $15 million rom-com. Not exactly a winning strategy. But here's the thing. Most people agree the marketing wasn't the main problem. The movie itself was, because it never really feels epic. Not in the way it needed to. Compare it to Gladiator. You watch Maximus and he feels like a legend. A hero. Someone you believe in. Then you watch Alexander and it just feels like Colin Farrell in a blonde wig trying to figure things out. That's a problem. On top of that, critics went after the historical accuracy. Stone's response? He knew. He admitted it. Some things had to be changed to fit the story into a 3-hour movie. Other things? Just creative license. That's how movies work. Fair enough, but audiences didn't really buy it. And looking back, a lot of people think the film should have been smaller. Cut one of the massive battle scenes. Trim the budget. Maybe don't spend $5 million on Angelina Jolie. That alone could have changed the equation. The fallout didn't stop there. This movie didn't just flop. It scared Hollywood. Another Alexander the Great movie was already in development. Directed by Baz Luhrmann and starring Leonardo DiCaprio and Nicole Kidman. Big names, huge potential. And after Stone's version bombed, the whole thing got shut down. Luhrmann later said releasing another Alexander movie after that would have been basically suicide. But here's where the story takes a weird turn. Because Alexander didn't die, it just changed formats. On home video, the movie actually blew up. The director's cut alone sold around 4 million copies in the US, bringing in over $60 million in profit. That's huge. So Warner Brothers leaned into it. They released more versions, Final Cut, Ultimate Cut. And together, all those releases made over $100 million, just from home media. So yeah, the movie flopped in theaters, but it made its money back later. And if Warner really kept their marketing spend low and only put in about $50 million, they actually came out on top. Not bad for a disaster. As for awards, total silence from the Oscars. Same with the Golden Globes. The only place Alexander got noticed was the Razzies. 6 nominations including Worst Picture, Worst Director, and Worst Actor. And honestly, it does make you wonder. If Alexander came out today, same movie, same choices, would people react the same way? Or would it suddenly be called bold, misunderstood, maybe even ahead of its time? But this time, for real, that was Frameback. Subscribe for more rewinds and see you on the next one.